The Supreme Court decided that Boris Johnson had acted unlawfully in proroguing Parliament and that he'd given unlawful advice to the Queen. It's an extraordinary judgment, and one of the most extraordinary features for lawyers is that all 11 judges were unanimous on every single point in the judgment. There were a number of issues in the case that were controversial, and yet every single judge agreed on these issues. It has huge significance, and one of the ways in which it's very significant is that in future, prime ministers will need to be very, very careful about suspending Parliament, because if they overreach, then the courts are ready to intervene. Now, the fact that the prorogation was unlawful does mean that Boris Johnson has broken the law. In this case, he has violated the law of the Constitution. He hasn't committed a criminal offence, but he has broken the law. There's another example we can give here. There is legislation on the books called the Benn Act, which requires Boris Johnson to request an extension from the European Union by the 19th of October. And if he fails to do so, then again he will have broken the law. And that may lead to certain consequences. So the courts may become involved in forcing Boris Johnson, ordering him to request an extension from the European Union. If he still refuses even there, then the courts may find him in contempt, and there may be some quite dramatic consequences to that. So what does this judgment mean for Brexit and for Parliament? Well, the immediate consequences are that Parliament has now resumed sitting and is holding the government to account. It also seems to be that the judgment is going to be used as a political football, and you can see this a little bit already. The opponents of the government are pointing to the fact that 11 judges in the Supreme Court unanimously decided that Boris Johnson's actions were unlawful. And they will argue that this is a reason for him to consider his position to resign. The government, however, is integrating this judgment into its own narrative about how the government is trying to implement the will of the people against establishment forces, which now include not just Parliament, but judges as well. And just to reiterate overall the significance of this ruling, this is a blockbuster judgment. It will be on the reading lists in every law school in the UK in the next few weeks and months. All law students will be studying it. But not just the next few weeks or months, it will be studied for years, decades to come in the UK and also globally. It is a judgment that is of global significance.